so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go through those 3 graphs and make sure that we can answer questions about them. Okay, because I mean, that's just as important as us being able to draw it as us being able to sort of interpret it. All right, so we're gonna do one of each. What I might suggest, we're going to kind of work these together. There are 3 or 4 questions for each one, so I might just suggest that you hold off on writing anything down and maybe take a picture of it when we're all done. I don't know if that works for you, because otherwise, I mean, you could write the questions, but that's not going to make much sense if you don't have the graph. Okay, so we might just kind of work through it, and then we'll snap a picture when we get done. All right. All right, and yeah, okay. All right, so histogram tends to be the easiest of the 3, mostly because we are familiar with that graph. Like we see that in textbooks and online, and we can pretty much read a histogram for the most part. All right, so let's look at this. We have a histogram that says how much time do high school seniors spend per week on math homework, all right? And the first question says, how many students spent between 62.5 and 77.5 minutes working on their homework? So what would you say based on that graph?
Around 9.
Maybe 9? 9? Did everybody agree with 9? Okay, so yeah, so we're looking at, just to be sure we've got that, we're looking at this boundary, the 62.5 to 77.5, we're looking at the height of that bar, which is about at 9, right? Okay, so we would have answered 9 students there. All right, so what about this one? How many students spent 47.5 minutes or less working on their homework?
19.
Okay, and you got 19 from what?
Like 47.5, and then
I
just
said
add them
8.
all up, the ones that are below it too.
Okay,
I said 8.
you say 8. Okay, so let's see. What did the rest of you say? What was your number?
19.
19, we got a 19, we got an 8. What do you guys think?
18. I said 8 because the 47.5 to the 62.5 is just that it's the 47.5 is over 47.5
Right, so but we want, let's see, we want 47.5
or less,
or smaller, right?
so it'll be 32.
Okay, so it's gonna be all of these, because those are gonna be the ones that are 47.5 or less, right? All right, so I'm gonna look at those 3 bars. So let's see, this one has 8,
19.
and this one has 6, and this one has 5. So I'm gonna add those 3 up, 8 and 6 and 5. That should give me 19. Right? All right, do we agree with that one? Are you okay there? All right. All right, and then one more. All right, so which class has the might be 2 more. Which class has the lowest frequency? From where to where?
77.5 to 82.5.
Yeah, so we're looking right here because this is the lowest bar, right? And so if it's got the lowest bar, it has the lowest frequency. All right, so 77.5 to 92.5 because it has that lowest bar. All right, I think there's maybe one more. Or maybe not. Okay, I guess that's it. All right, so anybody have a question with those 3? Seems okay? Okay, so if you want to quickly take a picture of that so you've got it for your notes, I'm gonna move out of the way so you can do that. All right, if you're not in a good spot, feel free to. Okay, those of you at home do the same thing. If you want, take a picture of your screen, screenshot it so that you got it if you need it later on. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the other 2. The other 2 are a little more complicated. than the histogram. All right, so here we go. All right, so this is the frequency polygon. All right, so I want you to remember that these numbers across the bottom, they're the midpoints, right? Okay, so remember that these are the midpoints. And then these are your frequencies. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind as we look at the questions. All right, so the first question is asking us for class width. Okay. So let me show you a quick example here. I'm going to come away from this problem just for a second. Let's say I have a frequency distribution that looks like this. Okay. All right, if I'm asking you for class width on that, how do you find class width?
Range divided by number of classes.
Okay, range divided by number of classes. All right, but that's really not information. Like if they only gave me this, right? If they only gave me this, I don't have range or number of classes on that necessarily. Chat, just in case somebody at home wants to jump in. Okay, so remember class width is like the span of the class, right? So how many numbers get spanned from 10 to 14? 5, because you can have 10, you can have 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so the class width is 5 because this class, all of the classes span 5 numbers. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is look at your midpoints. What's the difference between the two midpoints, between 12 and 17? 5, okay? Between 17 and 22? 5, right? All right, and so that class width, because it is the difference between each of the classes, it's also going to be the difference between any two midpoints. Okay? All right, so if I come back to my problem then, how can I figure out the class width for that particular data set if I don't have anything except the graph? What can I do? Guys know? What's the class width there? Seven. All right, how do you know it's 7?
You subtract the ages between each age, 7, like 16, 23, 7.
Yeah, right. You pick any two of the midpoints and you subtract. Okay, so I could subtract, I could say 23 minus 16. Okay, and that's going to give me 7. Or I could say 30 minus 23. It doesn't matter. Pick two of the midpoints, subtract, see what that difference is in between them, and then you can come up with the width. Okay, just like we did in this fake example that I wrote on the board there. Okay. All right. Okay. So, any questions with that part? All right, so let's do one more here. Okay. So, This says, this product was most popular with which age group? All right. So, I am guessing, yeah, that's what I would guess. I would guess if I left you to come up with your own answer, that you would have told me 30. You guys agree with that? Why 30? That's the highest point. So you would have looked up here and you would have said, hey, that's the highest point. That corresponds to 30, and you would have written down 30 as your answer. The only problem with that is that the question is asking you for the age group. It's asking you to go back and give the class, like from here to here, not just the midpoint. So 30 is the midpoint. But I need to back up and actually get the class from this number to this number.
23 to 30.
Okay, what are you saying?
Age is 23 to 30.
23 to 30. Okay. So let me look at that. 23 to 30. Okay, so the only problem with that is that that class doesn't have a midpoint of 30, right? Okay, so I don't think that's quite it. You're on the right track though. Okay.
23 to 37.
23 to 37. All right, let me look at that one. All right, 23 to 37 would have a midpoint of 30, right? But it's too big because we said the class width had to be 7, right? And 23 to 37, 23, 24, 25, 26, I think it's going to be 14. Okay, it's going to be way more of a span than we need. Okay. So I know the midpoint has to be 30. I know the class width has to be 7. Okay. Anybody else want to take a stab at it? Is it what?
30 to 30.
30 to 37, okay. I think that's going to be the same problem that the other one had. It's 30 to 37. Okay, so it's going to have the right width, but it's not going to have a midpoint of 30 because 30 is going to be the beginning point on that one. So I don't think that's quite going to get it. All right, so let me show you how we can kind of figure this out. All right, I'm going to draw a number line and sort of use that to get a visual on this. All right, so I know that the 30 has to sit in the middle of the class. And it's supposed to span 7 numbers. So I'm going to start adding some numbers on either side of this 30. So like just as a number line would go, the next number would be 31. The previous one would have been 29. Remember that you want to keep 30 in the middle, and you want 7 numbers when you're done. Okay, so I'm going to add another one on each side. Next one here would be 32. Previous one would have been 28. Right now I've got 5 numbers. Remember I need 7. Okay, so 33. Another one, 27. All right, so there we go. 27 to 33 is the class that has a midpoint of 30 and spans 7 numbers. Okay? All right, are we okay with that now that you're seeing it? Okay. All right, so the next question is going to ask you least popular. All right? So why don't you work on that for just a minute, and we'll try to clean up this right here. All right, least popular with which age group? Again, see if you can find the group.
Is it 55 to 61?
I think 55 to 61 looks good. Okay, so we're like looking at this point down here, right? Because it is the lowest point. So we're looking at it saying to ourselves, okay, midpoint is going to be 58. We still have a width of 7 that we have to deal with, right? All right, so let's draw ourselves that quick number line, put the 58 in the middle, and then start tacking numbers on either side, okay, until we get to 7 of them. All right, so 59, 57, that's 3 numbers. 60, 56, 61, 55. Okay, so there we go, with 7 numbers, 58 sitting in the middle, is that what you said, 55 to 61, perfect. Okay. All right, so that would be our answer there, 55 to 61. All right, any questions with that one? All right, let's see who is not muted. India Waller, can you mute? Can you mute yourself? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's see, I think there's one more of these. TV is not working real great this morning. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, so last question says, how many people between the ages of 26.5 and 40.5 purchased the product? All right. All right, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna find those 2 numbers. All right, the 26.5. All right, where's 26.5? Well, I don't know exactly because it's not on the bottom, but I can sort of judge that 26.5 is gonna sit somewhere in between the 23 and the 30. Would you agree with that? Okay, and then the 40.5 is gonna be in between the 37 and the 44. Okay, so I'm gonna take these two dashes and I'm gonna extend up. Trying to draw a straight line there. All right, more or less. All right, so there is the 26.5. And there is the 40.5. And the question says, how many people are in between? Okay, so what would you guys say about how many people are falling in between? 18. Okay, so you've got 2 sets of people that are in between those 2 numbers, right? So one of those is at 12 and one of them is at 6. All right, so I'm going to do 12 plus 6 to give 18. All right. Any questions there? All right, so again, if you want to take a picture of that so that you've got that in your notes, you can look at it later if you need it. Go ahead and do that. All right, anybody need to ask anything on that one? Anybody at home with a question? All right, so we'll go ahead and look at the last one then. All right, so that's our ogive. All right, so remember that an ogive goes back to the boundaries across the bottom. And it does cumulative frequency on the top. All right, so the fact that it's cumulative frequency is really important to remember. What does cumulative frequency mean? What is cumulative frequency? Do you remember how we find it? Do it? Yeah, we kind of add as we go, right? So we're constantly adding as we go from one class to the next. All right, so keep that in mind, that we are constantly adding as we go to one class to the next one. All right, so the first question says, how many data values are in the sample? All right, so either tell me the answer or tell me what you think we need to do.
Would be 7.
Okay, all right, so 7 is a really common answer because you counted the points, right? Okay, so remember that, you know, I could have a class, from 9.5 to 19.5. It could have a frequency of 50, but when I come over here, I'm gonna place a dot, right? So, or cumulative frequency of 50, all right? So the dots, all the dots tell me is how many classes I have. Because for every class I have, I'm gonna be putting a dot on screen. All right, does that make sense? So I know that I have 7 classes going down in my frequency distribution, but that doesn't tell me how many data values I have in this sample. Okay, so let's try something else. Anybody got another thought? Okay, so the other thing that students will tell me is they'll tell me if I want to know how many data values there are in the sample, a lot of times they'll say, well, let's start adding these dots up. Okay, so like this top dot is at 30, the next one is at 28, the next one looks like it's at like 23, and then they start adding those frequencies up. That's also incorrect. Why? Why do I not want to go in here and take the frequency for each dot and add them up?
Oh, because it's a cumulative
Because
frequency.
it's cumulative. So we've already added them up, right? So if you add them up again, now you've added them up twice. Okay, so we don't want to do that. So remember, cumulative frequency adds as you go. So if I want to know how many data values are in the sample, I'm just going to say 30 because I'm going to look at my top dot. That is the total of everybody. It has a frequency of 30. Okay, remember, cumulative frequency is constantly adding. So when you're done, you've got the total. All right, anybody have a question on that one? Okay. All right, so how many people spent $19.50 or less on entertainment? What would you say on that?
Seven.
7.
2.
Okay. Does everybody agree with 7? Ugh. Okay, again, the other popular answer that I get here is 9 because people look at this and they add up this one and this one, but remember they've already been added, right? So if you want 19.5 or less, you look at the 19.5 and you come across and that is your total. All right, so the answer should be 7. All right, this other point doesn't have anything to do with it.
Can you explain how you got 30 again?
Yes, so your top dot is your total. So this right here has a frequency of 30. That means that you've added every class ahead of it, and the total, the final total is 30. Because remember, cumulative means you're adding as you go. Okay. All right. So last one here, which class has the highest frequency? All right, so I need a from where to where on this. Okay. So let me ask you this question. When I went,
27 and 33.
okay, let me ask you this question. When I went from this class to this class, how many numbers got added in between? Two.
It looked
Right.
great.
So this class, right between here, only had a frequency of 2. And it moved up just a little bit, right? Okay. What about from here to here? What was the frequency in between those two?
9.
Yeah, 9, right? Because this bottom one's at 7 and then the next one's at 16. So this one had a frequency of 9. And look at what happens when you moved. You made a big jump, right? Okay, so the highest frequency is going to occur where the biggest jump is in the graph. Okay, and so I think it's at that 9 that I noted. So we're going to say it's going to go from 19.5 to 29.5. And that's going to be the highest frequency.